Bell, before we begin, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that history tried to bury. At 85 years old, David Allan Coe should be a name slowly fading into the background of country music history, remembered only by hardcore fans and outlaw purists. That is how institutions usually prefer it. Time softens controversy, silence erases discomfort, and legends are carefully edited to fit clean narratives. But something unexpected happened. Instead of disappearing quietly, Coe's name resurfaced with force, carried not by nostalgia, but by unfinished business. After decades of being ignored, warned, and quietly pushed aside, he began speaking openly, without filters or fear. And what he revealed wasn't a celebration of his career. It was a challenge to the very foundation of country music's most protected institution. This wasn't about personal recognition anymore. It was about truth, power, and how easily a system can erase someone it finds inconvenient. Coe's story forces uncomfortable questions about who decides legitimacy, who controls memory, and how many voices were silenced to protect an image. The timing matters. At an age when most artists seek peace, Coe chose honesty. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the calm confidence of someone who has already survived everything the system could throw at him. David Allan Coe's life never followed the path Nashville likes to romanticize. He wasn't raised in music halls or guided by mentors who opened doors. He was born on September 6, 1939, in Akron, Ohio, into instability almost from the start. By the time he was 9 years old, he wasn't being tucked into bed at night. He was being handed over to the courts. His father remarried, and a decision was made that would permanently alter his sense of belonging. His sister stayed. He did not. From that moment forward, Coe stopped being a child in the eyes of authority and became a problem to be managed. His youth unfolded inside reform schools and juvenile facilities where discipline meant pain and compassion was rare. These were not places designed to heal. They were places designed to break resistance. Each attempt to run only tightened the system's grip. Stealing cars wasn't rebellion for him. It was movement. It was escape. By his teenage years, Coe learned a lesson that would define his worldview forever. Institutions don't save people like him. They control them, discard them, and move on without looking back. Eventually, reform schools turned into adult prisons, and Coe's world narrowed to concrete walls and locked doors. But inside that confinement, something unexpected happened. Music found him before freedom ever did. Other inmates noticed his voice first, long before any producer or executive would. Singing became survival. Writing became therapy. In a place where identity is stripped away and replaced with numbers, music gave him something personal to hold onto. Began writing songs not for fame, but to stay sane. These weren't polished compositions built for radio. They were raw reflections of anger, regret, and longing. Later, Coe would describe this period as the birth of his prison gospel. Songs shaped by isolation, fear, and resilience. There are disputes about some details of his incarceration over the years, including claims that were later questioned. But the larger truth remains untouched. Prison didn't just influence his music, it defined it. When he was released in the late 1960s, he didn't come out rehabilitated or grateful. He came out guarded, distrustful, and deeply allergic to authority. Freedom didn't soften him, it sharpened him. When David Allan Coe walked out of prison, he carried more than a criminal record. He carried a notebook filled with songs and a resentment toward systems that claimed morality while practicing exclusion. This wasn't the start of a redemption story. It was the beginning of a collision. Coe didn't approach music asking to belong. He approached it prepared to expose how belonging actually worked. Nashville wasn't calling his name, so he decided to show up anyway. When he arrived in the late 1960s, he came with no manager, no record deal, and no interest in playing polite. While others waited patiently for auditions, Coe parked a hearse outside the Ryman Auditorium and lived in it. The message was clear. He wasn't seeking approval. He was challenging indifference. At first, Nashville ignored him. They had seen drifters before, but Coe refused to disappear. He sang on street corners, in alleys, anywhere people would listen. His songs didn't sound like what country radio preferred. They were darker, more personal, and harder to ignore. Eventually, his words forced attention, not because the industry embraced him, but because it couldn't deny his talent. His songwriting broke through before his own voice ever did. When Would You Lay With Me in a Field of Stone became a massive hit for Tanya Tucker, Nashville faced an uncomfortable truth. One of the most intimate and successful songs in country music came from a man they didn't know how to present. Instead of opening doors, that success made executives nervous. Coe didn't fit the carefully managed image of rebellion they were crafting for others. He wasn't rebellious in theory. He was rebellious by experience. His early records sounded like confessions, not performances, and audiences recognized that immediately. Bikers, outsiders, former inmates, and people who never saw themselves reflected in Nashville's clean image found something real in his music. Coe wasn't selling a character. He was living one. And that authenticity made him both powerful and dangerous to a system built on control. For most country artists, the Grand Ole Opry represents legitimacy. It's more than a stage. It's a symbol that says you belong. For Allan Coe, that door never opened. Not once. Across decades of touring, songwriting, and influence, he was never invited to stand on that stage. There was never an official explanation, only whispers. Some blamed his past. Others pointed to his image or later controversies. But people who worked behind the scenes described something more deliberate. By the late 1970s, Coe had proven that success didn't require institutional approval. He sold records, he filled venues, and he did it without playing along. According to multiple accounts, a private confrontation occurred involving Coe and figures tied to Opry leadership. Voices were raised, warnings were issued, and a line was drawn. From that moment on, silence became policy. His name stopped circulating internally. Opportunities evaporated without explanation. It wasn't public rejection, it was quiet erasure. As the years passed, Coe watched peers he influenced receive honors he never would. Inductions, tributes, documentaries that rewrote the outlaw movement while skipping over the man who pushed it furthest. To the outside world, it looked like he had been left behind, but Coe wasn't done. He had learned long ago how power actually works. Prison taught him that institutions protect themselves first. Nashville confirmed it. Instead of fighting publicly, he documented privately. Conversations, threats, broken promises, he saved everything. Friends recall him saying he didn't need to win now. He just needed to outlast them. Silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. For decades, Coe hinted that he knew things the industry wouldn't want exposed. Most dismissed it as exaggeration. But he never forgot slights, and he never moved without reason. He watched as figures with darker rumors were celebrated while he remained unmentioned. Time passed, the industry grew comfortable. Then in early 2025, everything changed. A private podcast recording surfaced, nearly 2 hours long, calm, measured, no anger. Coe named names. He referenced letters. Voicemails, warnings. He described events from the late 1970s that disturbed him deeply. He admitted he never went to authorities because he believed it would destroy him completely. Instead, he kept evidence as protection. The recording was never meant for release. It was quiet, controlled. But once it leaked, there was no stopping it. Clips spread across social media. Forums exploded with questions. Why was he never invited? Who decided that? Nashville's response was telling. Major outlets stayed silent. Radio stations ignored it. When a statement finally came, it was carefully worded and non-committal. Outside the industry, fans demanded answers. Veterans quietly confirmed blacklists were real. The silence spoke louder than denial ever could. By spring 2025, it was no longer just controversy. It was a reckoning. Quiet damage control began. Old staff members disappeared. Internal reviews were rumored. The Opry's mystique cracked, and Coe stood at the center without celebrating. At 85, he wasn't seeking validation. He wanted the truth acknowledged. His absence was no longer about behavior or talent. It was about power, and time had finally shifted that balance. The public response was immediate. Streaming numbers surged. Songs once dismissed as outlaw fantasy now sounded like testimony. Younger artists openly cited Coe as an influence, not just musically, but philosophically. A man who proved survival outside the system was possible, even if it came at a cost. Coe remained measured. In his final remarks, he said he never needed approval, only acknowledgement. He described the blacklist as an attempt to erase him quietly and let time finish the job. Instead, time gave him leverage. There was no funeral, he said, They just tried to let me die off. But he didn't. He waited. And when he spoke, the system couldn't control the narrative anymore. There's a cruel symmetry in his story. A child unwanted by family lived long enough to outlast the institution that tried to pretend he never existed. Gatekeepers lost control in an era where silence no longer works. From his porch in Tennessee, surrounded by guitars and decades of scars, Coe no longer needs a stage. His voice reached further without one. And now the question remains, did the Grand Ole Opry lose by excluding him, or did David Allan Coe win by exposing them? Backhand index pointing, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories history tried to erase.